All right. Hey, it actually worked. That was my first time ever scheduling a broadcast. I think it's working. Is it working? All right. Yeah, it does work. It does
Hey,
work.
it
Shut
actually
up.
worked.
Shut up. That was my first. There we go. All right. More Pink Floyd dramas here, everybody. I know you love Floyd drama. I know. I know everyone loves Floyd drama. So, I guess we'll just start. If you've been on Twitter today, or I guess any social media where you could hear about music news, you might have heard about a certain new feud bubbling up, and it started. It started with this tweet from Polly Sampson, who, if you don't know who Polly Sampson is, it's David Gilmour's wife. She wrote the entirety of the Division Bell and also Louder Than Words, which was on the Endless River. So she's a prominent songwriter. And she tweeted this. Sadly, Roger Waters, you are anti-Semitic to your rotting core. Also a Putin apologist and a lying, thieving, hypocritical, tax-avoiding, lip-syncing, misogynistic, sick with envy megalomaniac. Enough of your nonsense. There was really no prompt to this one, like any clear prompt to this being said. But I'll get into it in a bit. I do think there was, but very strange tweet to wake up to. So I've read this. I was like, oh, and a lot of people in the comments were, of course, with Polly Sampson on it. And we'll go over a bit of what's here, and I'll just try and explain the best I can, I guess. Anti-Semitic. Waters has been a pro-Palestine activist for a really long time, though. He's also been alleged anti-Semitic stuff. I covered a little bit in the Wall. I covered a little bit of it in the Wall retrospective I did, where I talked about the Goodbye Blue Sky controversy, where there was falling stars of David coming out of these bombers. There's other stuff too. A lot of it is just kind of situated on the whole Israel-Palestine conflict. Putin apologist is the recent statements Waters has made, somewhat defending Russia's stance in the Ukraine-Russia war. Is there actually a name for that? Regardless, lying, thieving, I'm going to guess has to do with stolen songwriting credits or things he said that he did, which he did not. There's a lot of debates like that, like who did the opening money tape loop, stuff like that. Hypocritical, that could really mean a lot. Tax avoiding, I have zero clue. I have never heard an allegation of tax avoidance. It goes back a really long time, maybe to around the time of 1977 to 79, if I would have to guess, during Animals and the beginning of the Wall, when they were tax exiles, essentially. I'm not sure, though everybody was a part of that. Or it's something new. I'm getting texts. Lip syncing, that's actually like the one thing here that you can definitively prove is true. The Wall show has lip syncing. Us and Them probably had lip syncing. This Is Not a Drill definitely does, though less than usual. Less than the last tours, at least. And there's lip syncing going back to the original Wall shows. How is he misogynistic? That one actually has a bit of interesting history to it. There's quotes from Polly and David where they basically said that Roger looks down upon Polly. The way they explained it, it was like, oh, you got your wife to write the lyrics, referring to the Division Bell. I'm going to guess that's what she's referring to here. Is Waters looking down at Polly as a songwriter because, basically is like a hired gun because David couldn't write the songs. Though I wondered, it is kind of it is a sexist view to be looking at. but I wonder how much of it ties into Waters' own values as an artist rather than anything regarding sex, or gender, or whatever. Roger's someone with such strict artistic values. It's partially why everything fell apart the way it did back in 1983. 40 years ago now, which is wild to think. But I wonder how much that played into it. So that's what I think they meant by misogynistic. And then sick with envy, again, self-explanatory, and megalomaniac, again, self-explanatory. So it's like every name in the book you could call Roger. And it's a really strange statement. I'll read some comments real quick. Wasn't it from the recent interview he did? Yeah, I'll go over that in a second, but I believe so. So this dashed any hope of a Pink Floyd reunion happening in the future. Not that there was much to begin with, to be honest. That's exactly how I feel about it. Though I do think this will have some larger consequences in regards to how Pink Floyd conducts business. And just kind of how they talk to each other. So it didn't stop at this Pauly Sampson tweet, though, because as the day went on, it progressively ramped up and just kind of got uglier. Because it's one thing for this tweet to be made, which is, it's a weird tweet, but it's weirder. It is very much weirder when, oh, that's big. It's very much weirder when, oh my god, why is this image so big, Roger? Roger made this post onto Twitter, and it's really interesting. Well, I'll read it first. Roger Waters is aware of the incendiary and wildly inaccurate comments made about him on Twitter by Pauly Sampson, which he refutes entirely. He is currently taking advice as to his position, which... That's a very weird tweet. And my way of viewing it, why I think it's so weird, bit of a wild day, isn't it? That is the truth. The reason I think this is a really weird statement from Waters is because it's very unlike him. Waters is someone historically and infamously who will talk off the cuff and say whatever he wants, regardless of whether people care. I mean, look at his, recently, look at his statements on the Russia-Ukraine situation. It is so of his own worldview and of his own narrative in a way. He doesn't care about how, CNN is going to look at him. He doesn't care about how random people on Twitter, or even really what the band thinks. At least that's the vibe I get. So when he says he's currently taking advice as to his position, that struck me as a lot uglier than a lot of the statements of the past and the controversies of the past. My guess, and I might just be talking out my ass, and Music Lover said it, I think he's talking to lawyers. I think he's going to go for defamation. The Pauly Sampson tweet, whether you agree with it or not, that could be seen legally as defamation on Waters' character. And I think it's now just getting to a boiling point. It's a tweet that was somewhat unprompted. Again, I'm kind of speculating on that part. But it's something that I think really could be taken as defamation by Waters' side, and I think that's what he's doing. There's no reason to make a statement so reserved, especially for a guy like Roger, if there wasn't some alternative plan at least being thought of. That's the weird part of it to me. And that's what makes this message a lot darker. And then it gets worse. David Gilmore joins the fight explicitly. Now, earlier in the day, after Pauly Sampson wrote that tweet, the David Gilmore account liked the tweet. I thought at the time that First, does David Gilmore even run his Twitter? I could see Polly Sampson running hers, but David never struck me as a very internet savvy person. So that's what's kind of weird to me. But this is like later he liked that tweet. So there's some sort of co-signing of that Polly Sampson message. And then this is a full explicit agreement on that, which is interesting in its own right. The whole, for Polly Sampson and David Gilmore to make a big statement like this is really something, because those two have, again, historically been very kind of to the side. It's something they don't always focus on. They maybe talk about it once in a while, maybe share a little blow with Roger, like after the whole password thing, the website password horribleness. Or was that the animals? Look, there's so many controversies, I don't remember, but it might have been the same thing, I don't even remember. But they're usually more quiet on these sort of issues. So for Polly Sampson and David Gilmore to take an the offense on this one is really strange. And that's what makes me feel like something prompted it. And that kind of leads me to what I think is the reason. Yesterday, Waters posted this post. I took this from his YouTube, though it was on Facebook, I think Instagram. I don't really use Instagram, so I wouldn't know. Twitter, the usual social medias. Says the truth will set us free against the backdrop of the outrageous and despicable smear campaign by the Israeli lobby to denounce me as an anti-Semite, which I am not, never have been, and never will be, against he backdrop of, blah, 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 blah. It's a whole thing describing this interview he did with the Berliner Zeitung. Sorry, again, if I'm mispronouncing things here. The interview itself is, in one way, it's what you expect from Waters' political talk nowadays, especially in regards to the whole Russia situation. But it is also so up its own ass and filled with logical errors that it just doesn't it's not really worth reading. Okay, so I have to interject here really quickly, because after the stream ended, I went back and read the article again, because I didn't really read the opening. I just skipped straight to what I knew were going to be the controversial parts, and that was a rookie mistake, because in the opening paragraphs, Roger announces Dark Side of the Moon 2. It's not called Dark Side of the Moon 2, but it is Darkseid's instrumentals with spoken word over it. Apparently, it's supposed to be his philosophy and mantra, but, it's Dark Side of the Moon 2. He's re-recording Dark Side of the Moon. Look, there's a lot of really crazy Pink Floyd news right now, but this has got to be one of the weirdest parts, and nobody is talking about it. Anyways, I think we can get back to the stream now. Waters will do things... I'm trying to think of great examples here. There's one part where Waters says things... He'll say things like that Russia is just average and they don't discriminate against people. And then the person interviewing Roger will go, well, in Russia there's a lot of, bans on LGBTQ, stuff. And then Waters will say, I don't believe it. That's kind of the interviewer will give an actual response that's well thought out and genuinely balanced. And then Roger will just be like, I don't think so, and move on. The interviewer will say something about Russia and say oh, well, they attacked. And you said you were surprised by that attack, but how can you be sure that they won't go further into Ukraine, or that their ambitions end at, the east of Ukraine? And he says, well, what if the U.S. nukes China? Which is on one hand, I get it, because I'm totally with him that the U.S. are not heroes, but it is such a bad logical framing of conflict. It doesn't even answer the question. But I wonder, more than maybe the Russia talk, in that interview, there's an interesting part where Waters explicitly talks about Hey, Hey, Rise Up. which is the new Pink Floyd song that's pro-Ukraine. And he doesn't like it. Of course Roger doesn't like it. He calls it, basically, it's just waving the flag with no meaning. That's what he sees it as. It's kind of what I see it as. But that's, I think, kind of the thing that might have sparked it. The interview itself is bad, but maybe that was the match that lit it. But yeah, it's a lot of conflict today, right? You know, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I kind of debated holding off talking about it because I feel like later this week or next week, we're going to be getting some major news. Another editor's note, literally the day I'm like editing this whole thing, it got announced by Russia that Roger Waters is speaking to the UN. I'm tired. I'm just tired. And it ain't going to be good news. I think Roger's he's looking for a defamation lawsuit. That's my theory on what it will be. And that is, ties are already severed between Gilmore and Waters. And there's even some reports that ties were even severing further, as Pink Floyd is currently trying to do a sale on their music catalog for something like $500 million. I wouldn't be surprised if tensions are at the highest they've been behind the scenes in a real long time. Dare I say, since 1979, 1983, that era, the Wall era, or even 1984, 85, just the Wall era. There's like a noticeable tension right now, and I'm going to guess it'll be a defamation lawsuit, but I think it'll also affect kind of how music gets released. If I'm not mistaken, the band members have to sign off on releases. That's how like the Animals remix and the 5.1, that's how that got delayed. You know, they never agree on things as small as liner notes in the booklet for a anniversary release, or for a remix. It's even the little things like that need that full agreement, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be a real sticking point, because Waters, he can make, they can all make money elsewhere, but this is going to be a big divide. I think it's really going to be a sticking point. It's going to throw a wrench in future plans, probably. It won't throw a wrench in the Dark Side plans for the 50th next month. But it is sad. I wrote it in the description of this, and I tweeted it out when Pauly Sampson made that original tweet. But it's like watching your parents fight. It is just, it's sad. I gave up my hopes that Pink Floyd would ever reunite. The fact Hey Hey Rise Up exists was a real shock to me, because I didn't even think that was possible. But I don't think we're ever... I think if anyone at this point is holding out for a true Pink Floyd reunion where Roger, Dave, and Nick come together, just abandon it. You are better off coming to the realization that this will not happen. It cannot happen. It is a statistical impossibility at this point. There are so many feuds and accusations and petty squabbles over things at this point that whatever goodwill they might have made up for back in the 2010s and 2000s, whatever they might have gained from that is gone again. It sucks too, because it's like next month is the Dark Side of the Moon 50th anniversary. The biggest album they ever released, an album that brought them to stardom, an album that fundamentally changed both progressive rock and rock music as a whole. It is a huge event. This is like Sgt. Pepper turning 50. It's a big deal, and they're fighting, and they're going to be fighting throughout the whole thing. It sucks. It really does suck. it sucks that the biggest moment, the biggest anniversary, is going to be defined a bit by this. It's probably going to taint the release for some people, sadly. I think so too. I think the release is already tainted a bit by Roger's statements over the past year. But I think this is really going to make it a lot more sad. I guess it's fitting too. I'm working on a video about Darkseid, hint hint. But while I was researching that, there was a quote from Roger where he said that Darkseid's like the last release they ever truly worked on as a cohesive band, where everyone was contributing and playing off each other. And future releases like Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, The Final Cut, all progressively get more and more split and divided. And we're 50 years away, we're 50 years out from Darkseid now, and that division is again at a peak. It's poetic, it's ironic, and it is depressing. This feud has been going on for 50 years now. Is there any longer standing musical feud in the history of music? I can't think of another that is, enduring in this way. Thoughts on the art competition controversy, the animation controversy, the Darkseid, if you don't know, Dark Side of the Moon, they're doing a contest where you can submit animation. There's a prize for the winners, nothing for anybody else. I believe it is pretty egregious. I think animation is one of the trickiest fucking things in the world to do. I can barely even draw like anything competent, let alone animate something and make it fluid. And Pink Floyd's entire history is built on animation. You look at 50 years ago, look at Darkseid. It is an album that's entire visual presence live is built on the work of Ian Ames. And later with Wish You Were Here and The Wall, that was built on Gerald Scarfe's animations and art. It sucks, that now that art, that animation, and the visuals that define so much of Pink Floyd's identity is being treated as something for free. And I don't know if they went into it with that intention, but it certainly rubs me the wrong way. It just sucks. I really do not like the animation idea, the animation competition idea. Pay artists, please, especially in a world now where AI art is becoming a thing. I wouldn't be surprised if AI art gets into the competition and it wins. I wouldn't be surprised if it wins because they'll see it as like, oh, this is the new big thing. They already are kind of celebrating it on their TikTok, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have TikTok, I wouldn't know. So, editor's note, they're also taking the IP for the video, so it is literally free work. It's free labor. Interesting to think about that, like how we got from a true group effort like Darkseid and to how we split up the group was by the Final Cut. Interesting even more, both of those were 10 years apart, near exactly 10 years apart. Darkseid came out from what I understand, there's a lot of conflicting dates on the Darkseid release date, but what I understand is that Darkseid came out on March 24th, 1973, Final Cut came out March 20th, 1983. Something like that. It's literally almost 10 years they went from a fully functional band to completely atomized. It's really depressing. And now, 50 years later, they're still fighting. The parents fighting analogy is a good way to put it. You love both sides, and it hurts to see it happen. Both people, I mean. And that's the truth, I mostly have talked about Waters on this channel because I think he's the person who does a lot of the, he is the guy who does the conceptual side of Floyd and the political side of Floyd, which is the stuff that I found interesting when I was getting into the band, or the philosophical angles too. And that's something, the songwriting and everything, that's a lot of Waters. But Gilmore, is such a huge influence and my favorite guitarist ever. Roger is probably my favorite bass player ever, my favorite songwriter ever, but Gilmore is my favorite guitarist. It really does suck to see a band that has shaped me into the person that I am fight like this. It really does suck. The only good thing Pink Floyd related released so far is the new woke logo controversy. That was the woke logo controversy is it's interesting. I guess I'll take some shots right now. When your ideology is so fundamentally stupid to understand the perspectives of quote unquote woke culture, a rainbow on an album 50 years ago, that probably would upset you. Does the rainbow as an icon piss you off so much that you forget the most iconic image in 70s rock history, if not all of rock history? It's very stupid. With how divided some Pink Floyd fans were before, I hope this controversy doesn't make it worse. It looks like it already did. I need to be pessimistic on that. I talked a little bit about how dumb I think online conversations can get with Pink Floyd in the now unlisted but still available Roger Waters controversy duology I did. In that, I talked about how people do not really understand where Waters is. They call him out of touch and all these different names. And they don't really understand that the guy is literally in a lot of ways at the forefront of the progressive ideology. Look at This Is Not a Drill. That's the most progressive show I have ever seen in my life. It's a great show too. It's one of my favorites. People don't want to understand. And it goes for Waters people too, because I saw a lot of people today going, who's this Polly Sampson woman? Or comparing her to Yoko Ono, which I think is genuinely pretty sexist, because the whole thing of Yoko Ono was already built upon sexism and stuff like that. So it sucks to see people compare Polly really did contribute a lot, especially in the Division Bell era. So it just sucks to see. If there's one thing, if you're one of these people and you're watching this, either right now or in the future, just take a breather and just treat people, whether you like them or not, with respect. When I say this, I'm not saying it in the way of both sides are equally as bad. I'm just saying in a general sense, understand what you're arguing against, because a lot of people don't. And also, this is a pet peeve of mine, if you're going to defend Gilmore, spell his name right. Please, seriously, do not say you're a fan of Gilmore and then spell his name wrong. I've seen this so many times, just don't do it. So we'll move on from that. How much do you bet that the final cut will never get remastered beside the 2011 mix, or ever get a deluxe box set? It's going to get swept under the radar. It's going to probably get mentioned on my channel. It deserves mention. They're not going to do anything about it, though. Especially with the divide. And I think Roger, I think, owns a lot more of that. I mean, he's the one who could do something like that, but I just don't think I don't think he would. I think he should, and I would buy it. I would be the first in line for a well-priced final cut box set. I just don't think it'll exist. I don't think the demand's there. Dark Side is obviously the popular child in this situation, which sucks because the final cut is an album that I think can really go toe-to-toe with Dark Side. What do you think are the chances of the Wall footage ever coming out professionally? I think I feel like I'm split, because on one hand I don't think, just with the politics of the band, it'll really happen anytime soon. But at the same time, it's one of those things, I have this feeling in music, with music releases, that at some point, everything we really want is going to get a release. I feel that way about the Beatles' Carnival of Light. That's a song that they've wanted to release since Anthology, and they've always shot it down. But I have a feeling that one day we're going to hear it, and it'll be the biggest release the Beatles have ever done since Anthology. it'll be a genuinely historically significant thing. And I feel the wall footage might happen. I think at some point, and as technology is getting better with brightening up footage and upscaling footage and stuff like that, that I think it's likely. I just don't know when. And I can't really place any bets on that, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe in 2029 we get a certain wall release. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm not sure how great Floyd archived things, to be quite honest. So it's always a possibility. It wasn't like Zappa where they had an entire vault of it, of well preserved stuff. It's entirely possible that the footage is gone and stuff like that. Though I really do wonder how much they have. Because, like, Dark Side, they're repeating a lot of stuff we've already heard. So it makes me think that they already ran out of Dark Side material to release, which is really unfortunate. Like, that's really sad that we don't have any more documentation of Dark Side. Considering it's one of the biggest albums of all time. Pink Floyd is probably one of the worst bands in terms of preservation. I mean, I don't know if they're the worst. The Who, Pete Townsend he recorded every single Who Tommy show and then burned them all, except for like one or two. That's pretty bad. I don't think Floyd ever did that. So I don't know if they were the worst, but they don't. I don't think they did a lot of preserving. So who knows? I think there was stuff with their mortal remains too, where there was certain things they're like, we don't have this, and they had to go find people who had it. I'm also wondering if we're ever going to get a higher quality release of the Wall movie too, like a Criterion release. It deserves a Criterion release. I think Roger doesn't really like the film, and he's the one who holds control on it. It's probably the only thing holding it back. I think he should. That movie just hit 40 last year. I think it would be a great thing to put that on Blu-ray and give a more in-depth look at it on DVD than what's already on DVD. With that the already existing DVD. But I think I'm going to end the stream there for tonight. I wanted to cover this. I'll cover controversy as it goes on, I think. I usually try and stream for it. I streamed when the whole animals liner note thing happened. And I'll just try and keep it updated. This will be your news source, I guess.